put in those Halloween haunted houses.
Right, should have got one of those haunted house records, with like the doors closing. And...
Oh, I got one of those to put in post. We just got to pretend it's always playing. We're always scared. Ladies and gentlemen, Goblins and Ghouls, it's a super secret, spooky edition of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band Good Time Podcast, only podcast on the internet or scrawled on walls in blood that identifies, biographies, and exercises all the figures on the top, on the cover of the Beatles' 1967 album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Today,
we have a guest.
We have a guest, yes. Let's introduce him. To my right. Dan, you're right also, I guess. Everyone's right. Ori, introduce yourself. Say hi to the fine folks.
Hello, all you people out there in TV land.
Spoiler, this will be TV at some point. There will be film, but I don't know.
And you will not be able to adjust your television.
We control the horizontal. We control the vertical.
You control the depth.
How come in the Outer Limits they only controlled the horizontal and the vertical, but they didn't control the third what's it called? Vertices? There's 3 dimensions. There's the left, there's up.
I mean, they're alien overlords, Who says they... Maybe they just don't understand how TVs work.
Are you saying that the Outer Limits was an alien-hosted show that they were broadcasting from space?
It's not.
I'd say alien only in that it's, otherworldly. Like it's outside of the terrestrial. And its medium was only, the left and the right. I mean, the up and the downs.
You never saw the guy that said all that stuff at the beginning. You always got to see Rod Serling.
I always thought it was Max
He wasn't
Headroom.
hiding behind a microphone. He had a boom mic over his head.
No, there was a tiny microphone in the cigarette.
At that signpost up ahead.
Yeah.
You've just entered the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, that's why he always had to hold that cigarette.
Ori, don't avoid the question.
Yes.
Tell us a little about yourself.
Yes. Hello.
Hello, Ori.
I'm Ori. Very happy to be here on the spooky, scary edition of the podcast because, let's face it, I'm probably the spookiest person you know.
I would say that.
I would almost be willing to bet money on that.
Certainly the spookiest listener of our show. We want to thank you for tuning in.
Yes.
I don't know. Am I out of base to think you're all caught up on this show? You've heard everything that's been out so far, all the way up to who was our last one? Anonymous.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm trying to work my way backwards.
Oh,
just to make life difficult on myself.
Well, yeah, there's no really wrong way to listen to it, I'd say. Like when you first look at your cover, which, by the way, that was a great time to dust the cobwebs off your album cover. I know it's probably been about a month or so.
Get your album cover, put on your 3D glasses.
Our album cover looks extra spooky today. There's X's over a lot of the people's faces.
I have put stickers. I put stickers so we know which one, because it gets a little squirrely when we get to the third row.
It is kind of looking like part of a Saw puzzle, though, at this point.
Well, also, and for all those record collectors out there, have no fear. It's only on the plastic sleeve.
If we're okay, here I have another reason why I think that those are all real people and not cardboard cutouts. If those were cardboard cutouts, don't you think they could have organized them a little bit more neatly? It's way harder to coordinate a large group of people of all different heights to stand and be like even and level in distinct rows. But cardboard cutouts, they wouldn't have been high. Could have been just as tall as the tall guy, and not hidden behind them, and you wouldn't have to zigzag through the season to figure out who we were going to do next. You know what I mean?
Also, a lot of egos, too. People wanting to be in front of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to wonder if there was some argument
crowded.
over billing. Yeah.
These are all the questions that we're yet to answer.
Like Leo Gorcey didn't want to be on the cover, but he gave Corey Feldman all that money. Corey Feldman didn't even end up on the cover.
No. Not on this one, anyway. Not on this timeline that we're.
Right, I'm about to say Corey
All
Feldman,
enjoying.
unfortunately not existing yet, was not on the not on the cover.
No, Corey Feldman was like right across the street from the studio when they were taking these pictures. Because Leo Gorcey,
He was waiting for his tire to get changed or something.
yeah, and he had a
Just happened to
coffee.
be there.
He was just drinking a coffee, and he left like $800 on the table.
Weird times.
And then Corey Feldman took it. Isn't that what happened? Was that canon, or was that just something that we thought would have been funny?
It's pretty close to canon. I don't know if it was 800. It feels like it was 600 or 400.
$600.
Yeah. But, yeah, they met.
That was all it took back then. There would have been no negotiations over like AI reusing of their likeness.
Topical.
Yep. Give me a couple $100, we're done.
Yeah.
That's not what we came here to talk about today, though. We're here to talk about the spookiest of the bunch, the motliest of the crew
Yes.
here on the album cover. A couple of these are going to be from the first row, which is the first season, which we didn't try too hard in that first season. We were just kind of finding what was up, and
Yeah, the first
Yeah.
season.
AI pretty much wrote all the biographies there, and there's a lot more to be said about some of these figures, included but not limited to Aleister Crowley, Edgar Allan Poe. Second row, we might even get into a little bit more about H.G. Wells. Who knows? But we got Ori here as our designated spooky man who knows about the spookiness.
I'm
And-
putting that on my resume now.
Yes, it's canon now. It's on the internet. So we're going to set the record straight and do a little bit more, give a little more credit where credit is due. And do you want to talk about Poe first? Or
Yeah,
want to talk
let's start
about
with Poe.
Okay,
It's good times.
yeah,
What do you know about Poe?
yeah. What are some Poe holes we left open?
Holes. Okay. Poe was actually as far as we know anyways, the first American writer to try to make his living solely by writing. Most of the other great American writers at that time had some sort of side hustle, but there was, maybe they were like news reporters or whatever. But Poe was like, nope, I'm a writer. I'm going to write. This is what I do. Married someone very, very, very young.
He
But
was or she was?
She was.
No, I was kidding.
Were they related?
I think maybe distantly.
Okay,
But everyone was back
It was a
then.
small
Not
world.
that many
That's-
people.
it's a small world.
Honestly, in that time, it would have been like, oh, I married my third cousin who's 14. Like that was how you did things back
Yeah.
then.
Great balls of fire.
Goodness
Exactly.
gracious.
All kinds of Jerry Lee Lewis. He at one point tried to do a newspaper hoax before getting into writing spooky stories.
Ooh, okay.
He did a hoax about a balloon journey. Because it was a time people were like, oh, hot air
Yeah.
balloons. That's crazy.
Air travel.
Right. But I mean,
Yeah.
you think about it, like we look at like, why are people worried about hot air balloons? But yeah, first time people could travel in the air.
Could they control hot air balloons? Did they have jets or sails that they would move?
I don't know if they really had sails per se. Like there was ballast. So you could, well, really once you're in the air, all you could do would be to ditch ballast. You were kind of at the mercy of the wind, but you could still control your up and down
That's it.
relatively well. Yeah.
Well, then how did anyone get it? Is that why it was so impressive that they got around the world in 80 days in that book?
Yeah.
Because it was a
That's exactly
coincidence
why it was
they went
impressive.
anywhere.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that when you're in a hot air balloon, you are controlling the vertical,
But
And
not,
not
the
the
horizontal.
horizontal.
No. Yeah, the horizontal, you are at the mercy of Mother Nature.
oh mother superior. So
but
he
yeah.
writes his hoax.
Yeah, he did this balloon hoax, and because he's like, well, people are mad for ballooning. It's weird because when you look at Poe, he was almost trying to like avoid the whole spooky story thing.
Huh.
Like he almost didn't want that to be his legacy in a way. And then he finally just had to accept, okay, you know what? I'm good at this. People want to read spooky stories. Fine.
What do you think he wanted to be known for?
I think he wanted to be one of like the more serious literary guys, you know, like a Longfellow, you know, or something like that. because I mean, whether it's literary horror or horror movies, horror is always kind of like in a sort of a low opinion.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. There's still no like Oscar for best horror movie.
But
Exactly.
nowadays, people would consider Edgar Allan Poe stories to be like classic, genuine literature because of how it's written and
Absolutely.
how poetic it is.
Yeah. If he came out today, A24 would be all over
Yeah.
him.
Oh, yeah. And 825, 826.
A23.
Bingo. There's no A in bingo.
Bloomhouse would have at least 7 movies in production.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, do you have any
Jason-
scraps of paper you scribbled
Jason
on?
Blum would have Poe on speed dial. Edgar, what's up?
Do you have any dreams?
Right. Did you have weird dreams last night? Okay, cool. We're making a movie.
Chew any gum and get bored? You got anything you wrote down? Anything. I don't care.
So yeah, now of course, we all know Poe's spooky stories. The narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, which was the big like cannibalism story.
I think it's a lesser known one. You familiar with that one, Dan?
No. I only know 2
Yeah.
of his stories. I know The Crow and
With Brandon Lee?
yeah. No, I know The Raven
Right.
and
Yeah, The
I
Raven's
know
The
The
Raven.
Telltale Heart, and I think that's.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are a few that, like, if you said the names of them, like, did he do The Pit and the Pendulum?
Yep.
Yep. Murders in the Rue Morgue.
I don't know that one.
Fall of the House of Usher.
I've heard of that.
Premature Burial.
I've never even heard of that.
That one was actually written from one of his own phobias. Poe was known for having a phobia of being like buried alive. And you might have come across this before. It used to be a case sometimes people will get buried with like a little string attached to a
with the
bell coming out of their
bell.
coffin and be like, "Hey, get me the hell out of here."
For whom the bell tolls.
Is that what that is named after?
No, just bringing it back to.
Yeah, interestingly enough, when you said The Raven, there have been 2 film adaptations of The Raven, both of which have nothing to do with the poem.
Really?
Yeah. There was a, I want to say 68, like late 60s, one that Roger Corman did, which is actually really fun. It's got Vincent Price and Boris Karloff and Peter Lorre, and
what a
they're all
cast.
wizards. and Karloff puts a curse on Peter Lorre that turns him into a raven, and Peter Lorre goes to Vincent Price and he's like, "Hey, like Boris Karloff is messing everybody up. You're the only wizard powerful enough to oppose him." Jack Nicholson is in it for a few minutes.
Wow, too bad they couldn't get anyone.
Yeah,
And then he would reprise that role 15 years later in The Witches of Eastwick.
Seasonal.
so yeah, it's really fun. At the end of it, you get to see like Vincent Price and Boris Karloff in like these big floating like throne chairs, and they're like throwing spells at each other, and none of this has anything to do with the poem, but it's fun.
Well, what's that poem even about? I'm sure if I read it now as an adult, I could probably like analyze it and come to some understanding, but
It's
it
like-
never made sense to
It's
me.
like foreboding and dread. The Raven is like that thing around the corner that maybe you don't know is creeping up on you. So that was Poe's kind of vision for the Raven. He's like, okay, this is about like there's always that darkness like around the corner.
But in the poem, it's a literal raven, right?
Yes, the Raven is rapping at his chamber door.
And why does it keep saying nevermore? Is it because it heard him say that?
No, just to be weird and scary.
Yeah, see, I feel like that would be hard to adapt into a movie without taking a lot of liberties.
Right, but people tried it. The other one was not so fun. It was, I forget the director, but it has help me out. The guy from One Crazy Summer.
I don't know.
Grosse Point Blank.
Oh, yeah, he's got that sister Cusack, John
Yes,
Cusack.
John Cusack, thank you. So John Cusack is Poe in this version of The Raven, and it's directed by the guy who did the V for Vendetta movie.
Okay.
And there is like they tried to do like a Saw movie, but like the killer is like doing murders based off of Poe's stories. So now Poe is like, "Oh, I have to stop the murderer," and it's bad. It's really really bad. At least the 60s version, it's like, okay, this has nothing to do with anything other than there's a raven in it, but it's fun. Because how do you not have fun watching Peter Lorre and Vincent Price and Boris Karloff try to like out ham each other.
Peter Lorre, Vincent Price, and Boris Karloff, the three dudes that are most parodied with their voices, like whose voices are actually like public domain, essentially. All three of them.
All right. How often do you hear a spooky voice and they're like, hello? You know, they're doing Karloff. Yeah.
Yeah, and then whenever anyone tries to do like the Igor, yes, oh, here we, that it's very nice to meet you. That's like, that's Lori, and then everyone knows Vincent Price.
Oh, yeah.
Thriller.
Yeah.
1,000 years. Stench of 1,000 years.
The funk of 40,000 years.
That's it. Thanks for the
I don't like when he says "getting down" because I don't think he understood that line. Why are they getting down? They were already in their graves. This doesn't make any sense.
Vincent Price should have done the baseball. When you watch baseball,
Color commentary.
Yes.
yeah, the baseball commentary in Meatloaf's Paradise Better Dashboard Live.
Also, Vincent Price, bisexual icon.
Oh,
Yeah, he
know
wasn't
that.
public
Okay.
about it, but he like came out to his daughter when she came out, and he's like, "Hey, you know what? I'm completely cool with the fact that you like girls, and here's why."
Oh, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
he was a very socially progressive guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He also had a curated painting collection. He did not paint these paintings. They were his favorite paintings. They were reproductions of like these favorite paintings of his, and he sold them exclusively through Sears. You would get this like subscription, and they would send you paintings that Vincent Price thought were really cool. That was back in the late 70s or early 80s.
Also a gourmet cook.
and he has a heavy metal album.
No.
That's Chris Lee.
Chris Lee. Oh,
Christopher
geez, shame on
Lee.
me. Yes, it is Christopher Lee.
Do you think Christopher Lee did that because he thought it was cool, or do you think he did it because people told him that it was cool?
I mean, Christopher Lee probably honestly thought it was cool. That's what I choose to believe.
He did it for himself,
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're going to do a metal album about like Charlemagne unless you're really, really into that
That's
idea.
right. It's about Charlemagne.
Is that what it was about?
Yeah.
Charlemagne the God from the Breakfast Club?
That's the one.
Yes, that's it exactly.
Is there anything else we left out about Poe that you want to?
Yeah, let's talk about his mysterious death.
Oh yeah, it's
Because I think people seize on this because he did so many stories that were spooky and macabre, and then there's all the like weird, unexplained circumstances around his demise. So here's how the story goes. This guy comes across Poe staggering around the streets of Baltimore. He's wearing like very shabby clothing. Apparently the coat he was wearing was like a coat that you would wear to like funerals back then. So definitely not something you would just wear like walking around. This was expressly like formal wear for a very specific situation. And a straw hat. The clothes did not fit him. They were very clearly not his.
fashion icon.
Well, Poe wasn't so much fashion icon, but he did always appear neat. You know what I mean? Like his hair was always done. You know, he always had his clothes pressed. So he didn't have glamorous clothing, but he was always very conscious about his appearance. So for him to show up like in these disheveled rags is massively out of character. You know, somebody wrote to like one of Poe's remaining relatives. And I was like, hey, this guy's in a really bad way. And Poe is just delirious at this point. We don't have any surviving records of what he said. Except for one thing, towards the end, he kept saying the name Reynolds. Nobody knows who he was referring to. Reynolds. Yeah, there were two guys he knew with the last name Reynolds, and like one of them was like a former editor of his, and it was like, okay, what? Like he wasn't close enough to these guys where it's like that's who he would be crying out for, you know, on his deathbed. I should throw out there too, the attending physician of Poe's demise is kind of suspicious. He changed his story a few times over the years. So we don't know if any of this is like 100% for sure, because there's not even a death certificate we can go back and look at. All the records are gone. So Poe is in this like delirium. People try to say, oh, it was drugs, it was alcohol, it was this, it was syphilis, it was cholera. People have said he got cooped. Cooping was a specific crime back then where you would abduct like homeless people off the street and like force them to go vote in elections, to like rig an election for your candidate. And they called it cooping because you would put them all in like a room together called the coop. And like you would ply them either with like alcohol or like the threat of violence, or maybe even a little bit of both, and get them to go do this thing for you. And then you would put like different clothes on them to try to get them to go do it again.
Voter fraud.
Yeah. So yeah, our choices are delirium tremens, drug problems, or voter fraud. Probably not syphilis. I mean, that one's the long shot.
Yeah, he was married.
Yeah. He was married. There's nothing to ever like suggest that he was anything other than very loyal, to his wives. There's nothing that says like he played the field or whatever. So,
But his wife did die, though.
yes,
Which probably,
right, and
was a bummer.
Right, and so let's getting this. The guy who ripped off his estate,
Oh yeah, Rufus Griswold.
Griswold.
Yes,
Rufus.
I rewatched the Drunk History episode of Poe, starring Duncan Trussell.
Right.
Shout out.
So first off, Griswold writes this like absolutely scathing obituary. It starts off fairly normal, like, oh, Edgar Allan Poe, blah blah blah. This old passed away this day.
He wrote the obituary.
Yes. And he didn't sign with his own name. We found out after the fact that Griswold was the one who did this. He signed it with a fake name, and then it goes into like, oh, it's so unfortunate that Poe was a drunkard and an opium fiend and a sex maniac and all these other terrible things. Because one time Poe gave him a bad review on a poetry anthology, and then they were just enemies forevermore.
Forever scorned.
Yes. And so somehow Griswold like tricks his way into being like Poe's executor. Again, we don't know exactly how this happened. Poe had like surviving relatives.
Diabolical.
Yeah. And he just does everything he can to just shit all over Poe's name. And this is why we have this idea now of like, oh, Poe was like a drunk, like crazy person. And that's why I wrote all these scary stories, because he was messed up in the head. He was a pretty normal guy by all accounts. He just happened to have this gift for writing spooky, creepy stories. And
very similar to Stephen King when you think about it.
Yeah,
Stephen King seems like a pretty normal dude that just, in fact, he's funny. If you've ever heard him like talk in any capacity.
Yeah, if you see him in an interview, Steve King is like just the goofiest guy, man.
Yeah. But he knows what scares him and he can document it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that.
He was also a huge alcoholic.
Yeah, I mean, Poe did have his moments, but when in times where where they were actually able to talk to people that actually hung out with Poe and that were friends with him, one of his contemporaries was like, well, yeah, after his wife died, he fell into a spiral. But I mean, let's face it, that happens to a lot of people. If you have that traumatic experience and you try to kill the memory with alcohol.
Yeah.
There was really nothing in Poe's history either in terms of doctors or people that knew him to indicate that he was this alcoholic that Griswold portrayed him as. It didn't help that his doctor listed the cause of death as brain congestion.
Your brain's a little tooty
right
now.
Your brain's stuffed up, buddy. And we don't have Sudafed yet, so I'm sorry, but you're kind of screwed.
Take a laxative for your brain.
Right.
Wear a diaper on your head so your brains don't come out your ears.
Right. About the best we can do is drill a hole in your skull and hope the brain congestion comes out.
Hey, that would have worked if you wouldn't have stopped me.
You're okay with that, right?
This was the thing they did back in Poe's time, where if they thought maybe your cause of death would be like embarrassing to your family or to the people that survive you, they're just like, oh, it's brain congestion.
If you know, you know.
Right. And now you know, Mr. President.
So I'm thinking from the options you have laid out, I'm thinking, well, also because I've been brought up on the history of him being like a drug-addled drunk, but
I mean, he probably did some laudanum, but so did a lot of people back then.
it's,
People were like, oh, like you have a health problem? Have some opium.
You're just saying that people
wasn't
have
like it
a
was
very
stepped on.
two-dimensional idea, like your joke that you just told. I stepped on it
Oh, no.
by mistake.
Sorry, Joe.
I was gonna say, so people are painting like a very two-dimensional picture of him being like this guy that's just like a crazy drunk, and well, he probably did have some issues.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the first thing people would have thought of when they thought of him back then.
No, his contemporaries would not have thought of him that way at all.
Well, the winners write the history books.
Right. Well, yeah, apparently the winners take over your estate after you're dead and run your name into the ground.
Yeah, that's talk about sticking the knife in and twisting it.
Can you imagine hating anyone that badly?
Can't.
Like, oh, it's not enough. I messed you up in life. I have to mess you up once you're in the grave.
I want to do a little turn here before we move on to another figure, but bringing it back to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album cover. Why do you think he's included on the cover? Who do you think would have wanted him there?
I'm gonna go with John Lennon.
John.
I think if any of them were like Spooky Story fans, it would have been him.
Plus, he probably could relate to the drinking.
Right. Tortured artist.
Yeah.
Tortured artist for sure.
Because yeah, I mean, Poe's life was not happy, for sure. He had a lot of problems.
Wasn't sunshine and rainbows.
No, definitely not.
Don't they have a song called Blackbird?
Beatles, yeah, they do.
Yeah. Who sings
The White
that
Album.
one?
Paul sings that one.
Paul sings that?
Yeah.
Oh, because that would have, if that was John, I would say that Poe's estate, or what's left of it, should probably litigate against the Beatles
Entitled to
for
some
ripping off the
royalties.
Raven.
Copyright infringement.
Hashtag not all blackbirds are ravens. At the end of each episode, as you probably remember, we replace people with who we're talking about, and for those that are just tuning in now to get a little spooky, this is probably episode 4 where we're talking about Edgar Allan Poe and Carl Jung. But we replaced Poe with Neil Gaiman. Do you think that's a good twist? Anyone else you might you would throw your hat in? We're not going to change it or anything. We already made up our mind.
No. I mean, I think that's a good equivalence. Yeah.
What were the runners up? Was it like Tim Burton?
Probably Burton was one we thought of.
Stephen King probably for
King
sure.
came up too.
I mean, for me, I would say Burton maybe imitates Poe a little too closely.
Yeah.
But
He's like a Poe fanboy.
I can definitely see Neil
Poe.
Gaiman like picking up the torch and running with it.
Yeah. Well, awesome. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about another spooky, scary figure on the cover, Aleister Crowley.
Wait, we take breaks now?
No?
Boy, do I have some thoughts about Crowley.
All right, and we're back. Thank you, Ori, for filling in the Poe holes. Now we're going to talk about Aleister Crowley.
Creepy Crowley.
Creepy. This is from back on our first episode.
England's wickedest man.
Wicked. I remember this is the first episode that we did, Dan, and you taught me about Anton LaVey, who I hadn't even known about before, and
The two of them, they're probably the most famous, right, Ori, as far as like satanic teachers.
Calling Crowley satanic is maybe not entirely accurate, but if you're talking about like alternative religions, yeah, those would be the two big names.
I thought Crowley did have like a version of Satanism. That's what I thought.
No.
Maybe I'm
There might have been a little bit
misremembering.
of satanic trappings when he first started out, but as Crowley progressed, he started coming up with his own systems of magic and own philosophies that were like a reaction not only to organized religion, but to other like stuff like Wicca and things of that nature. Where when he started exploring what the alternatives were to organized religion, when he came across witchcraft, he was like, "Oh, I could do this better."
Whereas
LaVey was just straight up like Satan rules.
yeah, but he didn't believe in Satan either.
Right. He believed in Satan as a concept,
Yeah.
not like literally like there's a dude with horns and a red butt who's gonna torture you forever when you die.
Yeah. Remember the devil with the red butt in Cow and Chicken?
Yes.
And he was always posing to show that butt. It was awesome. Couldn't get away with that now. Trying to get the kids into gay Satanism.
Yay, gay Satanism.
Satan's
here
a
for it.
groomer.
Yeah, so what do you know about Crowley?
Crowley. Okay. Whew, boy, where do we start with Crowley? There's a lot. Crowley is a lot of contradictions. I'll explain a little bit about Wicca first, just because that was one of the things he was kind of like reacting to.
Okay.
So you have this guy, Earl Gardner, back in England. This is like late 1920s, early 30s. And he started Wicca, which is usually what we think of when we think of witchcraft these days.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, a lot of like ancient religions, they didn't write stuff down. It was all oral tradition. So Gardner was a guy like, Christianity just didn't work for him. He wasn't necessarily down on it. It just didn't speak to him. And so he started studying like different kind of like folk religions of England and patched together Wicca out of these little fragments, that he could find. And of course, the big thing in Wicca is, and it harm none, do what you will. Crowley comes along, and just as an aside, people seem to think that Gardner and Crowley didn't like each other. They were fine with each other. Like they weren't like super best buds, but they were like, oh, we're both kind of like doing the same things. And they would
Yeah.
have talks about their philosophy. They were definitely they weren't on the same page, but they weren't antagonistic towards
Okay.
each other. Crowley comes along and Crowley is like, nope, I think do what thou wilt is the whole of the law.
So don't worry about
Don't
hurting
wor-
other people.
Yes, don't worry about consequences, which is
That's their problem.
yeah. So Crowley's religion, Thelema, is almost kind of like the libertarianism of alternative religions. There's some decent ideas there, but the people that practice it kind of go in a different way with it. Kind of like when you have that, you see people that join the Libertarian Party who just heard like, hey, no taxes, legal drugs, and then they just stop thinking.
So
at that
Seems
point,
pretty hedonistic.
yes.
Do you think that he was for the idea of like doing what you want to the point of like, hey, if someone just pisses you off, you want to beat their ass, beat their fucking ass, who cares? You think it was like to that level, or do you think he more encouraged the idea of like not hurting people, but like was like, really though, number one is just do what you want. But like,
Yeah,
it's-
he didn't take it to any kind of violent degree, but yeah, it was definitely like, hey, like, do what you want, find your true will. That was one of Crowley's big things, was like your true will is like your role in life. Once you are able to liberate like your subconscious from the strictures of your conscience. So once you're able to let go of like whatever expectations, like maybe society or your parents or your friends or whoever placed on you, now you can know who you really are and what you're supposed to be
Okay.
doing. Crowley was big into cultural appropriation, massively. And when he wasn't doing that, like he would do stuff like, oh, I wrote this book, the Book of Thoth, and this is like the magic of the ancient Egyptians, half of it he made up.
Oh.
Like he spent a little bit of time talking to like Egyptologists and whatever, but a lot of Crowley was just him being like, he would do stuff like, oh, I got these from Sacred Scrolls. Well, can we see the Sacred Scrolls, Alistair? Well, so actually the Sacred Scrolls are read to me by my spirit guides, and they only talk to me. Okay.
My hellhound ate the secret scrolls.
That sounds exactly like the story of John. Can't think of his name, but the Mormon, the guy that founded the Mormon.
And their
church.
12 golden discs. And they swear up and down, like, we have the 12 golden discs in the temple. Can I see them? Nope.
Yeah. and then he carved that stone tablet and he gave it to the people, and then they're like, I don't think this guy really has these discs. Let's just say that we don't have this tablet anymore. And then they go back to him and they're like, yeah, we lost that tablet. And he's like, well, God's mad at me and he won't let me translate from those discs again, so I'm going to have to write you something new from these other discs that God just gave me. And they believed that.
Right.
They were fine with that, and they left that whole part in the story of their religion. They left that all in there. Yep. Like, but you're, I guess, supposed to look at that and be like, yeah, he really, they were trying to trick him when they stole that tablet. They were really trying to trick him, but like, really, God was just mad at him for letting that happen.
Mm.
They didn't actually trick him. We believe that. That's so strange.
Well, I think the thing with Crowley that you have to understand is that I think Crowley was like, as far as understanding human psychology, he was brilliant. I think he understood how people work very well. I think he could read people very well. It's really benefited him in his later life. I was telling Joe this earlier when Alistair filed bankruptcy. The court in Britain found that he had been spending 3 times his income for years. And this was just all because he kept like ingratiating himself with people who would support him. Because they're like, you're the great magician,
yeah,
Aleister Crowley, like, come sleep on my couch. I'll feed you. I'll buy you heroin.
Yeah. Win friends and influence people.
You're right.
It's the kind of psychology he learned.
And, a lot of, when we talk about magic with a K, to distinguish it from stage magic, a lot of it is just psychology. It's working on yourself. You do the ritual to put yourself into a specific sort of headspace so you can confront a specific issue.
Yeah.
So if you're doing like a money spell, it's not like, oh man, it's not money is going to appear out of thin air, and like rain down over my couch like I'm at the strip club.
So it's almost more like taking like a cognitive behavioral therapy sort of approach,
very much so.
Where you're doing these rituals that are really just sort of retraining your mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very apt. Which is why, right, they always tell you, like, don't do a love spell.
Yeah.
Not that you're actually going to force somebody to fall in love with you, but you're putting yourself into that mindset.
But then why does the love spell exist?
Because people are dumb.
Do people that believe in this type of magic believe that love spells can work?
There are some. There are some who don't get that the work is like a metaphor for working on the self.
Yeah.
Which is why I say Alistair, understood human psychology like brilliantly. If he'd gone the route of actually like, being a professional, he probably could have revolutionized that field. But
it's just so strange to call that magic. Like, why would you call that magic and not just like a new type of psychology? Was he trying to appeal to like the Spencer Gift crowd?
Yeah. Well, because if you say psychology, people are like, oh, that's boring, that's dry, that's science. But if you say, I know a magic spell that's going to bring you money and success and all these other things that you want,
yeah,
that's much easier to sell.
It's like, it's a really long spell, but I can read you the first 3 things on the spell that you have to recite. Remember to not drink tonight. Go to work with a clear head tomorrow.
Right. Don't go out drinking every night. Put some money in your bank account. Go to work.
Lay your clothes out for tomorrow.
Right. Lay your clothes out. And suddenly you'll have more money. It's like magic.
You have to clean the floor in the kitchen twice a week.
I think part of Crowley's problem too is that he was one of those people where he would play people, but he also kind of maybe got high on his own supply a lot too. And I think especially as he got older and like his addiction started overtaking him more, I think that line started to blur for him. I mean, at one point he claimed that he could summon up the Loch Ness Monster. He was living in a house, a little hunting lodge on the shores of Loch Ness. It's called Bolskine. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Yeah, he had this little like fancy hunting lodge on the shores of Loch Ness, which later Jimmy Page lived in. There's some fun useless trivia for you. And yeah, he claimed he could summon up the Loch Ness Monster, and the locals claim that he would throw a sheep into the loch once a week as a sacrifice. We don't know if that part's true, but would I put it past him? No.
Sounds like he turned out just like Marlon Brando in his old age.
Yeah, he got pretty out there towards the end. I can't talk about Crowley without talking about the Gnostic Mass, though.
What's that?
So
Gosh, yeah, we're starting to get a little spooky here.
Yeah.
Now with Loch Ness and
right, magic
manipulating
rituals. Yeah, now we're getting into it.
Yeah.
Okay, I will try my best to summarize, but for those of you listening, just go Google Gnostic Mass. After you're done listening, you'll see that I'm not making any of this up. Here's the disclaimer: this is what people actually believe. So
Preach it.
one of Crowley's big things is the Gnostic Mass. So there's an altar with various ceremonial items laid out on it. There's the congregation who are wearing just sort of like flimsy robes and like nothing else. And then there are two priestesses that come out who are supposed to be topless. They're not always. They don't make anybody be topless, but
Helps.
that's the tradition. You just titties out. And then the I believe it's the deacon. I could be messed up with the title, but the high priest comes out and he has his sacred lance. You see where this is going.
Oh, and he has sex with her?
No, there's no actual sex involved.
Oh.
But he presents the sacred lance firmly
Rather phallic.
and authoritatively. Oh yeah, don't tell anybody who is into Crowley stuff that this is all like a big phallic symbol. They will get very angry with you.
Whoops.
No, it's not phallic at all. It's a sacred lance. It's
Sure to
'cause-
scratch
'cause-
that from the record then. I don't want
Right.
any angry tweets.
Oh, we're not even in the good part yet. So after the priest presents the sacred lance firmly, right, thrusting it out.
Against her breasts?
No, thrusting out towards the audience.
Oh.
Like, look at my enormous Schwanstucker. The priestesses then come in and start gently and lovingly rubbing the lance with sacred oils.
Oh, nice.
Adorning.
Yes, anointing it. Yes, lovingly. Lovingly is very important.
And then
slowly.
the real magic.
Slower.
Then the real magic is the sleight of hand trick that he does, where all of a sudden his penis is in their hand, and they're rubbing oils on that, and they're like, "Where'd the lance go?" And he's like, "That is the lance."
Right. Abracadabra.
And now we do it with pizza delivery guys.
And then once they are done anointing the lance, they gently kiss the lance up and down.
Do they have to caress the sacred orbs that hang below the lance?
I wish. Alistair probably thought that was taken a little bit too far. We would, but he was like, "Oh, should I throw some like sacred orbs in there?" No. Like I always just imagine being like, "There's no way I'm going to get away with this. Nobody is going to seriously do this and not realize I'm just making it like an enormous magical dick joke."
Yeah.
But
Disney did it on the cover of The Little Mermaid.
They did. That's covers banned now.
They could have just removed that one penis. The rest of those towers didn't look quite as much like penises.
No.
They all looked like penises, but it was just that one that was definitely a rotoscoped penis.
Very rotoscoped.
and then one of the priestesses lays down on the altar, and the lance is like waved over her. Again, none of this is phallic. This is all
No, it's all very literal.
yeah.
Or
And then the congregation has cakes of light, which are like these little, like their version of like a communion cake, which
like a wafer?
more like sort of like a little Debbie cake, which may or may not have semen in it.
Oh, that's decadent.
May or may not have. Who's to tell?
Yeah. Apparently, Crowley insisted that they had to have semen in them. I'm given to understand the more modern day interpretation is that they just have like different little like essential oils and whatever in them, and they don't actually
Well,
have semen.
it is pretty essential.
It's like Jesus didn't actually make that bread out of his own flesh, and his blood wasn't actually that wine. It's metaphorical semen. It's coconut cream.
And then they do a thing where they go around the temple 3 times and they say some chant.
So
and
there's
then
three.
now that the priest is exhausted, he puts the lance down and they're
Oh, now
And I'm spent.
then they bring out the sacred bed and he goes to sleep. Sacred sandwich and sacred bed.
right the sacred beer and a sandwich to fall asleep to. And that is the Gnostic Mass, religion's biggest dick joke in a nutshell.
Now we're really getting spooky.
Yeah. My other favorite thing about Crowley, this is something Crowley was just sort of like tangentially involved in, but one of the people he sponged off of in his later years was a guy named John Whiteside Parsons, or Jack Parsons. He more commonly went by Jack. Jack was one of the guys who helped found the Jet Propulsion Lab at NASA.
NASA.
Yeah, so he's a huge name in like early rocketry. Like he's the guy who laid a lot of the groundwork for what became
Another
like
phallic
the Apollo
symbol,
program.
too.
Yeah,
You could just have a big rocket getting adorned.
right. Your big flaming phallic symbol penetrating the moon. So yeah, he Jack Parsons, in addition to being a scientist, was also a ceremonial magician and a poet. Although his poetry kind of sucked, honestly. But he wound up being introduced through like mutual people to Crowley. Crowley, once again, had been run out of town in a rail because that's what happened to Crowley a lot of times in his life. People like to say it's like, oh, he was a world traveler. No, people just got sick of his shit, and then they're like, you got to get out of town.
He was actually a refugee.
Right. Right.
It's a weird way of calling him a world traveler.
Right. A refugee because of being an asshole. So he winds up at Jack Parsons' house in California. And, they get all kinds of crazy magical stuff going on. Jack Parsons thinks this is great.
The titties are out. The
titties are out. This is like
is oiled,
right.
ready to go.
And as far as Jack is concerned, like the Jimi Hendrix of magic just like came to his house to live with him.
Yeah.
He's ecstatic. Somebody else in that house was L. Ron Hubbard,
Oh no!
who was very good friends with Jack. Right up until the point that L. Ron decided he wanted to start his own religion. So he took a bunch of Jack's books, a lot of his money, and his wife.
L. Ron Hubbard took his wife?
Yeah, and then they went out onto the whatever boat that was that L. Ron was on when he started putting down the tenets of Scientology. A lot of what they do is taken from Crowley's work.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah, let that sit for a second.
Yeah, it's effective because again, Crowley knew how to manipulate people.
So in a way, is that a continuation, maybe of?
I wouldn't say continuation because there are different mystic organizations that are like there's like the OTO and the Argentum Astrum, and these are organizations
Is that
with
the
like
AA?
yes,
Okay. What is it again? What's the pronunciation?
Argentum Astrum.
Argentum Astrum.
Yeah, I don't actually know Latin, so if any of you out there do, I'm sorry. I probably screwed that up.
I remember when we did the episode, we just called it the AA because that's how AI put it.
Yeah.
Well,
It's like, not that AA.
right. Apparently, some people debate if like Argentum Astrum is supposed to be like the actual like name, but yeah, the AA and those are the
other one too,
organizations.
the Golden Dawn. You say or
Golden
you said before
Golden
that?
Dawn was the OTO.
Oh, the OTO. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Golden Dawn was John Dee, who was Crowley like inspired and Crowley adjacent. But, so yeah, there's organizations like that where they actually do have like a lineage back to Crowley. I wouldn't say that's the case with Scientology is just more like a bad imitation.
It's a cover band.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure the whole purpose of Scientology is just to blackmail people, because that seems to be what they do with the e-readers or whatever, the e-meter, whatever, I forget
Right,
what
the
they call
e-meter.
it. Which I've done one of those in Kansas City once. There were Scientologists just sitting on a corner, like that "Prove Me Wrong" meme. It was like one of those little setups, just
no.
right on a corner, and they had the two things, and I had to hold them, and it measured it. They didn't tell me I don't remember what it meant, but I got a sweet DVD out of it. I wish I still had it. It's a Scientology, like, get into Scientology. Here's what it's about DVD, but it's a half an hour long, and the entire time, no one ever says anything about what Scientology is. The entire time. Not even a shred.
Right.
They don't tell you anything that happens there. They don't tell you why it's making their lives better. They don't even give you hints. They're just like, yeah, I've been doing Dianetics for 3 years now. My life is great. That's like every single testimonial in the video.
Well, right, because you got to have that mystery to draw people in, right? It's like when you're at the carnival and the sideshow barker is like, come see the amazing, bearded lady. And you're like, bearded lady, what the hell?
Yeah, but they tell you there's going to be a bearded lady there. See, they're giving you a taste. If they just say, "Hey, come to this carnival where you're going to have fun." And that's all and you're like, really?
And
What
then you're
kind
like,
of fun?
well,
They're like, you don't even know how much fun. It's so fun
right,
here.
And then you're going to be like, oh, well, I like fun.
No, you're going to be like, what's at the carnival? And then they're going to be like, lots of fun stuff. And you're like, what is at this fucking carnival? Because that's what it was like watching that DVD.
Right, they just refuse to tell you. No, the carnival's great, trust me.
Yeah.
Okay, but are there rides? Are there games?
No, it's great.
Fun.
It's great.
It's great. It's fun. You like fun?
It was better than Cats.
Wait, so it's a musical? You just got to go.
Just gotta go.
I'm going to go again and again.
You get hung up on the details. It's fun.
There are no details.
So
Any other details you'd like to share about?
there was a rumor that Crowley may or may
AC?
not have been involved with British intelligence.
Oh, all right. Some conspiracy.
But I
there?
think that was something Crowley himself started, because there was a moment where he was like working for like pro-German groups in Britain. So he kind of like flirted with fascism a little bit. And I almost want to think that it's like, okay, maybe that's a rumor Crowley himself spread. To be like, no, I was totally infiltrating the Germans.
Little flirty fascism.
Right. I wasn't trying to
50s.
turn into a fascist. I was trying to keep them from turning you into a fascist.
Wow.
That's he's a complicated character,
Absolutely. Yeah. Dan, do you feel like you know a little bit more about him now
I do.
from what we shared? Folks at home, I hope you also feel a little more enlightened and just a little bit scared here on this Halloween.
Learning
He's
how many-
probably
episode.
still alive in a cave somewhere, 500 years old for some
Right.
reason.
Hanging out with Babaji.
Right, him.
So when we come back from this brief message, we can't leave AI out of the talk. We had AI put a little screenplay together that we'll recite for you, and
And then
yeah,
we'll send you on your way.
yeah. Hope so. Get your popcorn balls together
Right. Let's all go to the lobby.
and get ourselves some treats.
It's snack. Let's
Get
have
our-
ourselves a snack. Let's not get ourselves some treats.
Oh, there was treats.
No. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby and have ourselves a snack. That's how it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Dan's got you there.
Okay.
It's not and get ourselves some treats.
I thought it was treats. I like treats more than snacks.
And we're back.
But before we get into it, we got to let everybody know where these velvety tones are coming from. The four walls around us. We are here at the Golden Ox Studio here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Golden Ox.
The
We're
sacred
actually-
Golden Ox.
The Cronenberg Dungeon of Your Dreams. Golden Ox Studios. We're actually watching a Cronenberg movie tonight. I'm excited.
We are, yeah. We'll be diving into Crimes of the Future. It's a good one.
I saw a screenshot of it, and there's a picture of a guy with his eyes sewed shut and ears like human ears, but just sticking off his forehead. It looks awesome.
Oops, all ears.
I'm into it. In our lovely studio with our taxidermied friends.
There's lots of great podcasts at Golden Ox Studios.
There are, Dan.
My friend Brett Thomas has a podcast here.
Jeremy himself has one.
Jeremy has a podcast
All
here.
about being homeschooled.
It does. It
Have
does.
you ever wondered what it was
does
like,
all
what it would be like
about
to be homeschooled?
being homeschooled, but like when someone else isn't homeschooled and then they can't relate to it, and then they talk to him about what it was like when he was homeschooled, and then they tell him how their lives were different or the same.
The more you know. Folks, we're going to wrap it up here. We've got AI wrote us a beautiful story that I've had them tweak a couple of times. I won't give away any of the prompts. We'll just get into it.
The prompts will remain a mystery.
Should we
Yes.
cast for there's 6 characters?
There's 4 characters.
4 characters.
4 characters. And, of course, a narrator. I would like to... what's the word when you choose someone? Elect. Yes, I would elect Ori to be our narrator. Maybe in like, I don't know, your best Vincent Price or Christopher Lee kind of voice, or your own voice is also perfectly fine. And then we have, so we've cast Mae West, Marilyn Monroe, Fred Astaire, and Tony Curtis in a horror movie. So those are some prompts in the style of a mixture of Poe, H.G. Wells, and William S. Burroughs.
And some screwball comedy that the whole family will love.
And just a dash of dark magic. For the Mae West,
Just keep your sacred lance out of it, okay?
All
Well,
right,
who knows?
everyone, get your sacred lances out.
don't start anointing them until we tell you.
Brian,
no-
are you anointing your lance?
No premature anointing.
Brian, stop anointing your lance.
So Dan, if you would be Mae West, who plays the role of Lucy.
Okay.
I'll-
Is this a stretch for May? Does she get to actually showcase her acting abilities? Or is she just going to be doing the same old rom-com stuff that she is getting a little tired of doing?
I'd like to think she's stretching a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. We got Marilyn Monroe playing the role of Mona.
That's you.
I'll be happy to do her voice. We've got Fred Astaire. Oh, they changed his name from Fred to Ragtime.
Ragtime Fred Astaire, okay.
Who would like to be Ragtime? The other one is Tony Curtis, if someone would rather be Tony Curtis. Dan, I kind of remember your
who's-
Tony Curtis being...
Which of us can be the best, like, New Yorker?
I could do Tony Curtis the way that he did Some Like It Hot, where he's just doing Cary Grant.
This is good. And Fred Astaire's, I don't know, he's kind of nondescript in a voice.
Yeah, I can't even picture it.
No, exactly. It's just a
I can
voice.
see his feet move, but I can't hear his voice.
Your feet are moving, but you're not saying anything. Dance something once, why dance it again? So I'll take Ragtime. So I'll be Fred and Marilyn. You'll be West and Curtis, and Ori will be our narrator
All right.
with screen signs. We'll just pass it around and I'll tighten it up
Okay.
if it needs tightening. I'm scared. I'm glad the lights are on.
All right. I'm reading to there.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll describe other characters.
All right.
Hopefully the battery doesn't die.
Welcome to Time's Enigma. Amidst a stormy night, a decrepit mansion stands in ominous silence. In the study, 4 iconic figures with distorted personas gather, their faces warped by shadows and altered states of consciousness. I'm reading the cast too. Lucy gazes into the flames, her eyes hinting at secrets far beyond the ordinary.
This is Mae West.
Mona, played by Marilyn Monroe, clutches her shawl, her vulnerability intensified by a peculiar aura. Ragtime Fred Astaire moves with unsettling grace, leaving an enigmatic trail. Stumbled over that one. Sal, played by Tony Curtis, attempts to maintain composure even as the boundaries of reality blur. Outside, the rain pelts the windows, and thunder roars in chaotic rhythm. The four icons have been invited by Dr. Montgomery, a scientist whose experimentation blurs the line between science and hallucinogenic exploration. They wait anxiously, but he's nowhere to be seen. The clock strikes midnight, and a hidden door creaks open, revealing a laboratory. Gotta say it that way. When it's spooky times. Bathed in surreal light. They exchange bewildered glances and enter. Dr. Montgomery appears, his eyes reflecting a deranged intellect.
Dun, dun, dun. We'll have you be Montgomery too.
Okay.
Since that's, yeah. Oh, and there you go.
All right, there I am. Welcome, my astral travelers. I've melded the dimensions of H.G. Wells with the eldritch mystique of Poe's tales. The machine hums with dissonant vibrations. Sure. Suddenly, the spectral presence of Edgar Allan Poe consumes the room. Poe's tales materialize in bizarre ways. The pendulum of the pit in the pendulum swings erratically. The telltale heart beats in disjointed patterns. The apparitions of Montresor and Fortunato whisper surreal truths. I've channeled Poe's spectral energies, Dr. Montgomery says. The group frantically searches for an escape from this surreal nightmare where time and perception intertwine. As they attempt to activate the time machine, Bill, played by W.C. Fields, stumbles into the laboratory, exuding an uncanny energy.
What's all this hullabaloo, friends?
He fumbles with a mysterious vial, unleashing an altered reality upon the room. Aleister Crowley's spirit looms over them, his incantations rewriting the laws of the cosmos. We must confront the forces of Crowley's magic. The group delves into a surreal battle between the scientific and the occult. In the final confrontation, the machine sputters, and reality itself warps. Space and time collide. They return to the study, gasping for sanity, but the room remains haunted by the hallucinatory presence of Poe. The icons and the scientists teeter on the brink of madness, uncertain if they've returned to their reality or remain entrapped in the hallucinogenic dreamscape of William S. Burroughs' nightmares.
Fade out at the end. What a dud.
That was it?
That was it.
the whole thing.
There was no dialogue.
Oh,
Oh, you guys didn't
Gosh.
get to do anything.
I got a line.
You got one line, yeah.
You're just bummed that you got less lines
it's
than
all
me.
You
talk.
got you got your union mandated line.
You got a line too, Ori. I feel like
Oh.
someone's just upset that they didn't get a line.
No, there was like the characters weren't in it.
Joe was directing.
Yeah, I mean, it said that they
Awful.
were there. Some movies are better when they have less dialogue. Have you ever seen Drive?
Drive's real good.
It's a great movie. There's not a lot of dialogue.
That's true.
How do we fix this? Fix this quick.
You ever see 2001 Space Odyssey?
Yeah.
There's no dialogue in that movie.
The whole movie.
The whole movie
The
has
whole
no
movie.
dialogue.
Yeah, don't take our word for it. All right, here's some dialogue from the screenplay. Evidently, these are all real movies, of course.
They just forgot to give
They
us.
forgot to give it
yeah.
to us. Yeah, this was on the back page of it. I'll just set the scene. Interior mansion. Night.
Well, this place is hotter than a $2 pistol. What's the deal, darling?
I don't know, Eve, but something feels odd. It's like deja vu, but strange. Ragtime, Fred Astaire, paces elegantly, but with a hint of unease. I say, this is quite the peculiar soiree. Wouldn't you agree?
Let's just see what the good doctor has in store for us. No need to get worked up.
Dr. Montgomery enters, his eyes wild.
Ah, my esteemed guests, you've all arrived. Please, gather round. I have a most intriguing experiment to unveil.
The group exchanges nervous glances. Interior hidden laboratory, continuous. WC feels as Charlie stumbles drunkenly into the laboratory.
As you would expect.
What in tarnation is all this ruckus about? Where's the hooch? He reaches for his flask, but spills it onto the machine.
Aleister Crowley's spirit looms, chanting dark incantations.
Stop him! We can't let his dark arts prevail.
The group confronts Crowley in a chilling showdown. The room becomes increasingly surreal, the boundaries of reality warping.
This is getting stranger by the minute. I've seen a lot in my time, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined.
I'm usually light on my feet, but this is surreal. Where are we? It feels like the world is slipping away.
We need to find a way out of this madness. Let's stick together.
As the battle between science and dark magic reaches its climax, reality itself unravels. The group returns to the study, gasping for breasts.
Breasts?
Breasts.
Freudian penis.
Lancing.
Right.
Lances out. The group
Lances
returns.
out for Harambe.
The group returns to the study, gasping for breath. The room remains haunted by the presence of Poe.
Have we returned to our time? Or are we forever trapped in a dreamscape?
Fade out. The end.
The end.
Dum dum dum. I think they're trapped.
Yeah, I think so too.
I can see why
Yeah,
this
they're
movie
screwed.
never.
I don't think
really
they ever
took
made a
off.
sequel to that.
Oh,
No, I don't think they even had a real end.
right.
To
Rocks
it.
fall, everybody dies.
It was like Devil's Wind.
Devil's fart in the wind. More like.
I think I want to start calling Freudian slips Crowley and Lances. Like, oops, Crowley and Lance.
Again.
I think
That's just never going to get old, is it?
no.
Won't look at the lens the same way. Again. Be checking how
Hey, thanks for being a part of this, Ori.
anointed
Oh,
it
thank,
is.
thank you for having me on. This
You
is
brought
great.
a lot to the show.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you, Ori. Thank you for
very happy I could.
listening too. Thanks for being a dedicated listener.
Oh,
We appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely. I'm glad I could contribute to the spooky times.
We do it for ourselves, of course.
We do everything for ourselves, just like Crowley would have wanted.
Yes.
Right,
yes.
your true will.
Do what thou wilt. Wilt?
Wilt, yes. Do
Wilt.
what thou wilt. Is the
Like,
whole
like
of
a
the law.
flower. Uh-huh.
Yeah, you got to make it sound
Be like the
macabre.
flower. Well, and thank you out there in Gyroscope Land for tuning in to this super secret special episode. Season 3 will be coming, but honestly, probably not till next year, January, because we got to record them. We want to get them right. We want to do them better than we were doing them. So make sure you're keeping your album covers anointed with all those oils.
And don't ever forget, if you're not growing, you're showing.
Good night, everybody.